this is God's country.
This is VP Veterans Point.
Hi, this is Pastor Ted Marshall with VRM's Veterans Point. I want to thank you for listening to VRM Veterans Radio Ministry. With me is my sidekick. This is Colonel Linda Pugsley. She's also was a Vietnam nurse, and she is also an educator, author, head chaplain, and also the chief of chaplains for the Air Force Auxiliary, and our closest friend. And this is VP Veterans Point. And Linda, we're going to let you start the show off because you've got some interesting stuff to talk about, and we're going to have a slide presentation, and Linda's going to be letting you know, and we're going to go right into the program. Go ahead, Linda.
Well, I just wanted to say a couple of things here real quickly. There's so many of our young people that just don't understand how much this country has changed. They're only 15, 16, 17 years old, and all they've had is the garbage music, the garbage videos. They don't understand what's going on. If somebody says a wrong word, doesn't line up with their way of thinking, they fold. I mean, I just can't believe this. This is the most awesome country in the world. There's always forward progress. You always find out what doesn't work, you get rid of it. What does work, you keep it. So there's always forward progress. No one's looking at our forward progress. And it just is really something, just amazes me. We have some of these skinny jean latte drinking snowflakes that are out there sitting in an air-conditioned coffee shop drinking a $5 and $6 latte on their iPad and their iPhone, complaining about how terrible life is in this country. And I'm going, see, no one makes a comparative analysis. So that's a little bit what I wanted to do today. And some of it, we'll share some things, but some of it involves a little PowerPoint. So anyone watching, anyone tuning in can kind of see that. And you're really blessed and lucky today because as the PowerPoint comes up, you probably won't see us. So that'll work out. So.
But we do want to say hello out there and welcome to Veterans Radio Ministry.
Yeah.
And before we start the PowerPoint, we'll start this broadcast with a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for being able to reach our veterans out there and also reach the public that may not have an understanding of some of the points of view that we may be coming from. We thank you, Lord, that you've touched our heart, that you've given us an opportunity to share your word. And we just ask you, Lord, that your hands and also your voice be spoken here through this broadcast, that we are here for you and we're serving you. It's not about us, it's about you, Jesus Christ, our Savior. And we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lord. All right, if we could start that PowerPoint, I just kind of want to get to a couple of things here. I share this PowerPoint in, there you go, right back to the beginning. I share this PowerPoint in the high schools in the history of Vietnam classes. So I wanted to bring a couple of those points here. I wanted to get a couple of those points there. And I call it the other end of the gun. Many times when the veterans come in and share with the high schoolers, they talk about the things they did like in the infantry or door gunners or whatever they were doing. But there is something that happens when there is a war, when there is that conflict and there's shooting and bombing that goes on, like is going on in our precious Ukraine. My heart is breaking to see that, and I pray for a quick resolve. But there is an other end of the gun when someone gets wounded, and that's where I came in as a nurse, as a flight nurse, to evacuate the guys that were wounded in Vietnam. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But if we could have the next slide, please. And there are sometimes people there, like I said, it's real easy to sit in an air-conditioned office in Washington and run a war. And that's my personal opinion on why we didn't have the success to remove the enemy in Vietnam, because we just got tired and left. But there are rules of war. People do die in war. And rule number 1 is that young men and women die in war. And rule number 2 is that the docs and the nurses and everyone else in the medical field can't change rule number 1. One thing that I like, though, the moral code in our country, we have spent a tremendous amount of research and development and money on trying to have the least amount of collateral damage. There are other countries, including the one like Russia that's currently fighting in Ukraine to take it over, and it's absolutely amazing what's going on because there are people that are dying. We try and have the least amount of collateral damage, and there's countries out there that want the most amount of civilian damage because that will break the back and the will of the people. We do not bomb schools and churches and mosques. We don't bomb those places. Our enemy knows that, so what they tend to do is they tend to put their armament and their people in those facilities knowing that we won't be bombing them. So war is a devastating thing. And I mean, can you morally fight a war? Yes, we have in many occasions. The last war we truly won was World War II. And as we came in as the greater force with the ability that we did to help that world war end, I tell you, it was absolutely amazing. But I have often dealt with many of our veterans who have had to fight in war. And as a chaplain, they come to me and they ask, how can I justify loving God and honoring life and valuing life, and I've had to kill someone? And I tell them, look, there's no black and white answer for this thing. But I want you to reflect on something, that I would rather come from a country where its warriors are still mourning, as in Vietnam, 50 plus years later because they had to kill someone, than to come from a country that cuts off the heads of children and guts them in front of their family. You know, no. War is terrible. There is loss of life and property all of the time. So you don't want to have war. You want to avoid it at all costs. But when there is one, you want to win it, meaning you want to get rid of, destroy the enemy so they can't continue to do those immoral things. So, I mean, you can sit there in your little coffee shop saying how immoral war is. Well, if you were living in Ukraine right now, you'd want to be fighting back. They're trying to take over your whole country. You weren't even in a fight with them. You were just minding your own business, reading the newspaper, and then Russia decides to come in and take your country over. So we have some big, as a world, we have some big questions to answer, but I'd like to give you a little background, a little bit on our country. If we do not stay strong and prosperous and independent and free, then it's not going to work for the world.
No.
And some people don't like that, oh, well, the United States, it has to be number one. Well, there's always going to be somebody number one. You want China number one? You want Russia number one? Who do you want number one? You know, there's always going to be a number one. I'd rather have the one with a little bit higher moral code than some of the others, one that tends to lean toward freedom, individual freedom. I don't like some of the things that are going on in this country right now. Just because I might want to say something that's against what someone else believes doesn't mean I can't say it. And what I'm seeing now, if I don't kowtow to the mindset out there that I'm a racist and a bigot, that's not true. That's a lie. There are so many things that are going on. We don't want to lose the freedom of speech. I don't want to lose the freedom of choice. I don't want to lose the freedom of movement. And you lose all of that when you have a government that controls everything. Now, in their mind, they might think they're doing right because that way they tell you where to live and where to go to school and what to wear and how, because that controls everything and everything's fine. No, it ends up that all there is a bunch of elites at the top with all the money and the steak and the gas, and the peasants at the bottom. There is no middle class. I don't want to lose that here. And we will if we don't pay attention to the changes. So if we could have some of those PowerPoint back up there, Drew, if you want to put that next one back up. And we'll get that a full screen here, and we'll get the next one. This next one here, so true. Only the dead have seen an end to war. That was said a long time with Plato. And I didn't go to school with Plato either. They're dead. So.
But he's one of your students.
Oh yeah. You're so bad. You're so bad. But anyway, only the dead have seen an end to war. Meaning there is going to be conflict. There are those that always want to overtake others, and they are willing to do it by force. So I'm going to have the next slide there. It has some of the information I wanted to cover. This next slide is going to give us kind of a picture of what's coming up. I want you to look at that. Back in 1940, this is the worst thing that high school seniors were called on the carpet for. Look at that list. Talking out of turn. Look at that. Chewing gum. Oh my gosh. Making noise. Running in the halls. Cutting in line. Dress code violations. And littering. These are high school seniors. Now you fast forward just 50 years to 1990. And that's a long time ago to some of these young ones. Look at what was happening just 50 years later. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse. Look at that. Pregnancy, suicide, rape, robbery, assault. This is what was going on in our high schools. Now, what happened between the 1940s and the 1990s? A tremendous liberal mindset set in. No accountability for behavior. The dads were removed. Divorce became no fault. The dads were removed. Kids are there unsustained. No family unit. No sense of identity. No sense of belonging. No sense of value. And you start getting that. I guarantee you, if you don't feel good about yourself, the 3 feel-goods are going to come your way. Sex, alcohol, and drugs. We have middle schoolers banging each other in between the lockers, and they think it's a joke. It's just such a demeaning of the wonderful physical relationship that a man and a woman can have. And just to say a man and a woman, some people are offended. Well, you can have your belief system, that I can have mine. You can't shut me down. I believe that marriage was designed by God for it to be a man and a woman. And that's okay for me. And if you want to think something else, hey, that's okay for you. You're going to meet the same God I am, and you're going to have to deal with it then. But I don't want to get off on that, but I'm just saying, some of the changes you have to see from that list. What was going on back in 1940? Back in 1940, marriage was cherished. A man was working. No matter what color the man was, no matter what race the man was, no matter what culture the man was, the man in this country was out working 1 or 2 jobs, whatever it took to support the family. And the woman was at home, and that wasn't a demeaning job. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. How you're nurturing your kids and taking care of your kids, it's a full-time job. You got to be nurse, you got to be doctor, you got to be nutritionist, educator. I mean, all of those things happen. And what do? Over that 50 years, it was all handed over to the government. The churches didn't do the charity work. Now the government does. I mean, all of this changed. The family changed. The sense of pull yourself up by your bootstraps. When I grew up, we were told, if you need more money, you'll work more hours. It was a very simple system. And now it's like, no, you fill out another form and the government sends you money. What? The government has no money. It's my money and your money. It's tax dollars. And it's ridiculous. We are throwing away money. It is opening the system to fraud. It's opening the system to lying through their teeth. Or just fill out a form. No verification of it. There are people in this country right now that have a job, but it's under the table. So they fill out a form that says, I don't have a job. Or they live with a guy that's pulling in $1,000 under the table in construction, and they say, I have 4 kids, so they get paid for each kid. And so they'll have $5,000, $6,000 a month coming in between the government and all the programs and the things and the free stuff that's there. Even though you didn't pay for it, if it's free, that means you didn't have to make that much money. So you got $6,000 worth of stuff coming in your house from the government. That's so unfair to the rest of us that are working hard. We need to take care of the disabled for everything they need, but not the lazy. And God forbid someone should say the word lazy. They don't believe that. I deal with it as a chaplain and a pastor all the time. People are lazy. You help them find a job. They work there 2 days, and then they say, well, why didn't you work? Well, because I had a headache. You go to work if your leg's falling off. You do what you have to in order to provide for yourself and or your family. Now, we're losing that in here. Now, let's have the next slide, and we'll show some changes up to today. Now, that was up to 1990. And what's happening today? Now, add to that list today. We're up here in, 2022. Disrespect for teachers. I am absolutely shocked that kids are throwing desks at teachers. Bullying. Magnified, of course, by, all the social media. Sexual harassment. If I hear one more story about a teacher having sex with a student, I'm going, what in the world has changed in this country? The moral code has changed. They took prayer and Bible out of the school in the 1960s, and it's been downhill. Don't believe me what I'm saying. Look at what's around us. Gang activity, undesirable and extreme cult activities, extremist activities. The larger the school, the bigger the percentage of the problems. And if you don't believe me, all that stuff is in the U.S. National Center for Educational Statistics. I'm not making this stuff up. This is what happens in our country today. People look at a Twitter comment or a headline or something, and oh my gosh, and they believe it. They don't even look it up. They don't research it. He said such and such. And they said, I didn't know he said that. I go, you still don't know he said it because you didn't look it up.
That's right. They didn't fact check their own.
Yeah, I know. And then you're being fact checked.
Yeah. You don't fact check by going to
Google.
No. Or Wikipedia.
Yeah, you've got to go back to the original
Whatever happened to
documents.
Encyclopedia Britannica? And
I know. You have to
American
read
People's
that.
Encyclopedia
You have to
and so
read that.
forth?
I know. But anyways, that's part of the change that we see. And if you don't believe it's changed, just go back and look at those two lists. From 1940 up to 1990, in 50 years, the family's breaking apart. And you see the change in the young people. What was happening, chewing gum and littering was the worst things happening in 1940, and now we have drug abuse, assault, rape.
Yeah.
Something is amiss. Catch on, people. Something is amiss. Now, in my world, that amiss is that you walked away from God. We used to have Bible and prayer in public schools. I know. I went to public schools. It was something simple like from Proverbs or Psalms. And, usually something like, return a kind word for an unkind word. I mean, absolutely wonderful. And yet it's so crazy. There's a book called Original Intent. I've read it a number of times. It talks about the different laws that have come about in the country. There was a law that came up that banned the posting of the Ten Commandments in a courtroom because the jury might be biased in making their determination on someone who had murdered someone. Because it says not to murder in the Ten Commandments. So you might influence someone by looking at the Ten Commandments. I go, sweet Lord, you should have looked at that before you killed anyone. And as a juror, you should have known it. Just like, you see the attitude toward a moral code. Now, okay, if you've all heard of the Ten Commandments. If you don't like the first 4 that talk about God, then at least do the last 6. The whole world will change for the better. And then you die and go to hell because you didn't do the first 4. But that's your opinion. You can take that wherever you want it to go. But and I've shared this before, and I want to share that. And many of our veterans know this. We go by a moral code. Some are immoral, just like everything else. But God has given us a moral code, and it's not to stop us having fun. That is just like the barrier that's on the bridges. That Sunshine Skyway Bridge. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that thing should be 20 feet high. I hate that bridge. I hate going over. It's too high.
Remember the old one where you could look down right
I know. I didn't know. I don't
even
even want to think about that. But is that barrier on the bridge there to stop you from having fun or to stop you from traveling? No. It's to stop you from either on purpose or by accident going over the edge of the bridge to your death. That's all the moral code is. It's to give you a safer route across the bridge of life. That's all it is. It's so much better if people are honest. So much better. This is what's in my book, DMR5. Go get it on Amazon. Integrity first. We're losing that. That'll cover everything, including your taxes that are coming up April 15th. That'll include every contract you make. That'll include filling out forms with the government. You won't be lying on them. Integrity first. Sexual purity. Not prudity. Just purity. There is no wisdom in a 14-year-old fathering a child. There's nothing there for them or the child. Sobriety. Hello. Drugs and alcohol rampant. Sobriety. That's not to hurt you. It's to help you. Service before self and excellence in all you do. I mean, these are standards incorporated. So if you don't like to look at the Ten Commandments, I'm just giving you some rewording on some things. So those are the kind of things that kind of made those changes. And I just want to encourage everyone, veterans and non-veterans alike, if our country goes back to a moral code, not religious code, rules, you can't wear makeup, you can't... I'm not talking about that. Mankind will fight over that. I'm talking about the moral code, the basis and the foundation upon which you make your decisions. A high moral code. You'd rather die than lie. I mean, have it that firm in your heart and in your life to make those decisions. Now, I've got a couple other things on that slide. If you could pull those slides up, Drew, the next one. Let me see where we are. We're working on our time frame here. Now, why did I go to Vietnam? This comes with the moral code. I had a moral code back then. I was born in the 40s. And I was born in the 40s. I was a trained nurse in trauma injuries. I loved my country. Most of the veterans love our country. We don't love everything that goes wrong in it, but we love the idea that we're free. We love the idea that we're strong. We love the idea that we have freedom to work where we want. It's amazing to live where you want. Now, I can't live in the rich part of town. I'm not rich, but I don't need to. If you have a comfortable home and you're safe, then that's good. I came from a family that served. I was young and ready to save the world like everybody and save them from communism, because communism was what the problem was. Communism was the problem. Oh, but we got something going on here?
Just keep talking. There
Okay,
we go. We're
there
back.
you go. We're back. Communism, that's what we were fighting back then. Russia had taken over everything, Estonia, Latvia, and now they're trying to get it back again. We're in some deep trouble here. China had gone to communism. Communism is anathema to capitalism. And sometimes capitalism is being told that it's a bad word right now. It's not. Capitalism is called a free market system, a free market enterprise. What that means is that workers like me, it's like, if I pick 20, I'll be out picking corn. I'll pick 20 bushels a day. Somebody might be next to me picking 5 bushels a day. They're holding it up to the sun. Look how artsy-fartsy or whatever. It doesn't make me better than them. It just makes me different than them. And I need to be paid for that difference. If I have a skill level that's different, I need to be paid for that. Under communism, all the doctors are paid the same. All the nurses are paid the same. All the garbage people are paid the same. It's the same. So if you take a 20 bushel picking person in America, you can be paid per bushel. Now that's a pretty good idea. So what we need to do is make sure we maintain that here. Communism says all corn pickers are going to make, $10 an hour. So you're going to, what are you going to do? You work 40 hours a week, you're going to make $400 versus making the price per bushel that you picked. So I always ask the students, I go, is the 20 bushel guy under that system, what's he going to do? And what's the 5 bushel guy? Is the 5 bushel guy going to pick 20? No. It's going to lower it down to just 5 bushels being picked because the 20 bushel guy can't get anything out of that. That's what communism and socialism does. It ends up with just the elites that run the show because they think they're so smart and know what to do, and they probably never picked corn a day in their life. And only the peasants, no middle class. We have a middle class. We have poor in our country. A lot of them are poor because they made poor decisions. They have chosen drugs and alcohol. They have chosen a life of crime or whatever. So it's like unbelievable. There's reasons for poverty, and we never look at why someone's poor. If you're poor because you're disabled, we need to help you. If you're poor because you're untrained, we need to train you. We don't need just to send money out to anyone that fills out a form. This is where we're losing it, guys. So our young people, I would urge you, maintain that high moral code. Bring back the essence of this country, which is hard work. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Don't be on the dole from the government. I can remember when food stamps first came out, Ted, in the 1960s. I went to my dad. I didn't know. I said, Dad, I'm the oldest of 9. My poor dad's working 2 jobs, and my mom is working at night. Absolutely unbelievable. This is what was going on. I said, hey, are we going to get some food stamps? He says to me, we will never be on the dole from the government. That's like writing failure across my forehead. I went, oh, just thought I'd ask. So what we did was I went to work. I had 3 part-time jobs at age 15 to pay my way to nursing school. I mean, that's how it was. You did it, and there was nothing wrong with that. Were there other people who had their way paid? Yes. Were they richer? Yes. I'm not against them. We have the opportunity. You can make $1 million. You can lose $1 million in this country. But you have the freedom to do that. Under communism and socialism, it's all one size fits all. And that is so wrong because people are different. Like I said, if you have a better skill than someone else, it doesn't make you better than. It makes you different than. And that difference needs to be paid for.
Linda, we are coming from our just a station break time. We get about 25 minutes into it, close to 30 minutes. You're listening to VRM Veterans Radio Ministry.
There's your time.
And
So,
24. Gotcha. Okay. You're listening to Veterans Radio Ministry. We're broadcasting from our broadcast studios here at Trinity Church in Wesley Chapel, Florida. And VRM, you can listen to us by going to our website, veteransradioministry.com, or also you can also download the free app on Live 365 on your phone. Push in and get it downloaded, then go and put in VRM Veterans Radio Ministry, and it'll pop up. Mark that as a favorite, and you can listen to us wherever you go. If you got Bluetooth in your car, great. You can listen to us anywhere that you want to go. And remember, VRM Veterans Radio Ministry is a volunteer radio network. Everybody that works and produces and operates here are here as a volunteer status, kind of like our military. It's volunteer, and that's what we're about. We're here to serve. We're here to bring different points of view, but we're also here to bring the truth and life of Jesus Christ around the world. Thanks for listening. Okay, Linda. One of the things I wanted to mention, you were talking about communism. Mm-hmm. An experiment was done when the Pilgrims came here.
Yes.
And if you would like to go ahead and enlighten on that experiment.
Governor Bradford was the governor up there in Massachusetts area, up there, the original 13 colonies. But anyways, when they came over, they tried this little experiment. And they said, okay, we're going to plant corn and all of our crops and things like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it into a central bank and everyone take what they need. Oh, that sounds so good, just like communism. You know, everyone puts it in central and then it gets redistributed evenly and equally. Well, come to find out, there were some people that were harder workers than others, and they planted a lot more corn and a lot more veggies and did a lot more work than others. But the ones who did not work as hard, didn't plant as much stuff, didn't pull in as much stuff, didn't work as hard to get the harvest in, they still took out an equal amount of corn. Well, Governor Bradford saw that and he goes, this ain't working. So he said, no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to divide up, because everything was equal. You know, everybody was open. He said, nope, you each are going to be given a portion of land. Whatever you do on that land, it's yours. You can sell it, you can make more, you can make just enough, whatever you want. That's your piece of land, and what you grow and what you make is yours. Well, once he said that, everyone got out and started working, even those that weren't working. The women were out in the fields because they were told that they could do that, which means they could ship some things back to England and make money. They could sell some things to the local people and make money. It's just like, whoa, that worked out really well. It was almost a communist. It wasn't controlled from the top, but it was like a socialism experiment. And it just doesn't work because people are different. But when you tell them that they can keep the fruits of their labor, and you can sell the fruits of your labor, now they also, if somebody was disabled, they gave them corn. If somebody couldn't, if they were elderly, they gave them the stuff. But those that were young and able to work, they had to work, because now no one was going to give them something from their farm. They had to, their piece of land, they had to grow it. If you want to eat, sweetheart, you're going to work. It's funny how so much of our liberal mindset out here, they always quote in the scripture, and they're always saying, to the one much is given, much is required. But they never go a little further down where it says, the man that doesn't work doesn't eat. And they don't go a little further that says, the man that doesn't provide for his family is worse than an infidel. They don't get to those parts. But anyways, they don't go that far down the scripture. Do that. So, listen, we've got a couple of more slides if we want to put another one up here to take a look on, why I went to Vietnam. Again, I came from a family that served, and we were fighting the communism thing. If we get another slide there, and I think it's what war is next? And I always tell people, you're always complaining about war. Even God said the poor are going to be with you always. Well, the war is going to be here. Way back a long time ago, it was barbarism in early mankind. My dad's generation was fighting Nazism. And my brother and I, and my generation, you went there, my brother and I went to Vietnam. We were fighting communism. This generation is fighting terrorism. Now, it's amazing. I asked the people, I didn't show them this slide. I said, Nazism, barbarism, Nazism, communism, all sorts of isms are out there. I said, what is the ism that you're fighting? There was complete silence in the class. One girl raises her hand and goes, capitalism? This is our young set of next leaders. They think that capitalism is an enemy. Capitalism is your friend. The problem is not, capitalism is just a system of production. What's wrong is the bribery, lies, and corruption, bringing us right back to the moral code. Again, if you have a higher moral code, this system is going to work. That's why I urge you get back to the moral code. And if you don't fight that, just like us, if you don't fight it, you're going to die. And diplomacy, that can only work with sane, cooperative people, not the dictators and these religious wackos that are out there. God's telling me to cut your head off. What? the diplomatic stuff will not work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm afraid that when they start saying, well, we'll make a diplomatic solution to this, and I just think of Chamberlain in World War II.
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
I have
Neville
papers signed by Adolf Hitler guaranteeing us peace in our time.
Yeah, there you go.
Piece of what?
Yeah, piece of what? Piece of your butt. There you go. Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Veteran language. It came out.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, you haven't heard veteran language. We're going to be very good. We're going to be very good.
We have to try awful hard. We really do. But, it's not as hard as it used to be.
Yeah, I know. It isn't. Well, that thing about also, we're born because of we're broken. Not because of God. People say, well, God made me this way when they're liars and murderers and all sorts of other perversions that are down the line that are so acceptable today, try to be jammed into our culture. But God didn't make you that way. God made two perfect people and put them in a perfect place, but they had to have a free will. Because if you don't have a free will, you're a robot doing what someone else. So in that free will, and God knew this was going to happen, but he let it go because he has a plan. And they separated, by their disobedience, they separated from perfection. That's what we have. I always call us Adam's crack babies. He's the one who did the problem, and we got the disability. You're born with a broken thinker, wanter, and feeler. The only way that you're going to be able to meet the measure of God is to ask him to come into your life. You're born with a broken nature. The only thing that's going to work is a higher nature, but he'll never force himself. That'll be like spiritual assault. He'll never force himself. He even says in the scriptures, I stand at the door and knock. Invite me in. And that's important. Just take a moment in your time, of time in your life. You don't have to know and understand everything. You can even go to him and go, I don't even understand what all this is, but I know that I do wrong things, but whatever, I need help. Forgive me. Come into my heart, Jesus.
Can I interject something
and do
there?
something. Mm-hmm.
There's a very famous painting, and I'm reading a book that's it's really opening up my eyes in different ways. And there was a very famous painting of Jesus standing in a stone archway with bricks, and there was a big, heavy wooden door.
Yep.
Now, knowing my background as a PI, as an investigator, you look at things and say, hey.
A little differently there.
Yeah. A little diligently you look at things, and something was brought to my attention. And if you look at the painting, and you look real close at the painting, and Jesus says, knock and invite me in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you notice on that doorway there's no doorknob. See, you're on the other side of that door. You have to open the door and let him in.
Yeah, you have to let him in.
And that's what you have to do. It's very simple. And we invite you at any time that you're with us and that you're we have what's called what I call the
our
POP.
Our guy is finding
wait a minute, he's finding it. There it is.
Here.
There it is. Look at this. Look at this, Drew.
He's got this on our screen.
There it is, right there.
Yep. Got that. Whoop, he's got that on the screen. He's got a nice picture that
Watch
he found
this,
of what we're talking about.
Watch how Drew is on there.
Look at that. Look at that.
You see that?
Absolutely amazing. He has to knock on the door because you have to let him
in.
He'll never force himself. And it's sad, but a lot of our world has depicted God as some wrathful God up there ready to squish you the minute you do something wrong. No, this is a God of love. He wants a relationship with you. He is loving and caring. Now, he doesn't give excuse for sin, but he understands you're born in a spiritual wheelchair. He's not going to ask you to run a marathon. But you get Jesus Christ inside of you, and you ask him to help you. He'll put some braces on those legs. You'll get up out of that spiritual wheelchair, and you'll be able to, you might be hobbly-bobbly when you do it, but you'll be able to walk the walk that he says. Without him inside you, you're only going to go so far. Yeah. You're only going to be honest on your income tax till it starts hurting you, and then you'll lie. You're only going to love someone until they tick you off. You see, Jesus brings you further in that. He gives you an ability to do what you can't do in your broken nature. So it's not religion, it's relationship. My whole life changed. I didn't always understand what I understand now. I didn't always have a godly life. I did when I was younger. I was brought to church by my parents, and we went through all the rules and all this stuff. But I didn't have relationship. I had religion, and it's a good start. I mean, you're heading in the right direction. But, I was that crazy young nurse running all over and all this stuff in the military. And
Just see some pictures of Linda
no,
back then.
no. Thank you, Lord, we didn't get those pictures out then. So whatever.
No, they're in the slide presentation.
Oh, yes, they are, but they're the good ones. But anyways.
No.
Oh, you didn't mean that?
No,
I'm
no,
so
not
so
when
glad.
we did our speeches at the.
Oh, okay, there you go. All right, there you go.
Let's just see some pictures
Let's
back
see some
then.
pictures back then. So, anyways, so the story begins. This is my brother and I in uniform. This is how we started. We just came out of World War II. So
Is that your own Jeep?
that's a little ride that we were in. Next slide. And that's my dad. He was in uniform. He was a Marine, wounded at Guadalcanal, ended up at Portsmouth Naval Hospital. Next slide. Here's my mom in uniform. She was in the Navy, so she was caring for him in the hospital. That's how they met. And then they got married. 9 kids later. I'm the oldest of the 9. So next slide. And so when it came time for Vietnam, it wasn't unusual for my brother and I to volunteer to go in the military. He was a flight mechanic, and I was a flight nurse. We had that picture taken at Sears. This is when you're young. You're not thinking of it.
Yeah.
In case we were killed. So our parents would have something to remember us by. Well, geez, whatever. Okay, next slide. And here's my brother's barracks at Benoit. He was at Benoit when I would fly into Thompson-Oot. I'd be able to go over and visit him, which was absolutely amazing to be able to see each other in a war zone. Next slide. And this little village outside of Da Nang. I spent most of my time in Vietnam in Da Nang. Very primitive. I preferred it. There was a lot. The 3rd Marines were out there. We'd have to go visit them, get them ready, and all this stuff. That was really devastating wounds. But this is a little village outside. And when people are complaining what they don't have here, and it's a terrible country, this is a village. We built the road. Everything else is dirt. All that steel and wood and everything, our guys would sometimes order a little extra, knowing that when they put it in the trash pile, these poor souls would be able to build a fairly sturdy stuff. Look at that ramshackle house. There's no doors and windows.
Let me interject
screens.
something, folks. If you're on the radio, if you're listening to it on the radio, or if you're listening to it on our page or our app, you can also go to YouTube. You'll be able to see these slides. Go to veteransradioministry.com, or go to the YouTube channel and put in Veterans Radio Ministry, and that you'll see our YouTube channel. Pardon? Our Rumble, and you'll be able to see the slide presentation. Also, you'll be able to see Linda and I here in person live, looking and saying and hi and waving to you. But go ahead, and we just want to let you know that this is going to be a great way that, hey, I heard that on the radio. And when it becomes a podcast, of course, when we make it into a podcast, you'll be able to see everything. You'll be able to see the slides, the pictures, and even Drew was able to pull up those pictures. This is amazing, some of the stuff that we were able to do. And now let's go back on with the slideshow.
Okay, let's go back on with the slideshow. So anyways, I always like to show the young people this particular thing. There's no separate rooms in there. There's no bathroom in there. There's no running water in there. The chickens and pigs are in there. There's mud in there on the floor. They got a little fire pit in there. And when the monsoon rains come in, one of them said, "Well, there's no bathrooms. So where do they go?" I go, anytime the urge is there, along the side of the road, whatever. And then the monsoon rains come and they wipe all the dung from the animals, the dung from the people. And that's why the kids are dying from dysentery and diseases that haven't even been in this country for ages and ages. My gosh, the whole country closed down because of a flu with COVID. My gosh, these people, this is all they had. When we got there, we wanted to help them. We wanted to stop that invasion. We wanted to give them better everything. So go ahead to the next one. Anyway, so the next time you think you have it bad, it's some under the bed gear that we had. That's our flak jacket and helmet, because they had all sorts of, bombings on the base, so you had to kind of get your gear ready. So next one. Just kind of show you that little chapel at Da Nang. Some of the stuff was makeshift. Some of it was some wooden stuff that they had. But I show you this one because there's a lot of water, as you well remember. You could always tell the FNG. That's the new guy. We're not going to tell you all of what that means, but they get wet and they go change their uniform. Then they get wet again, go change the uniform. After a while, they go, forget it, it'll dry. You just get wet, you get wet.
In about 2 months, it's going to dry.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, yeah. When you're out in the field, it's about 2 months to dry. Okay, next slide. And there's a couple of nurses in battle rattle during the daytime. And then next slide, they didn't care at nighttime. Mortar attack at night. You're back in the battle rattle at night. So go ahead, next slide. And then here we have, that's me in the middle with the poofy hair. That's the style back then. Some of the med techs with me at Tonsanute. These guys were the ones that were there doing a lot of the admin work, logistics, and also they helped load up the aircraft. We had to go in quickly. Once the plane landed, those of us on the ground, we had to get them loaded up real quickly so they could take off, because the 141 was a pretty big target. We wanted to get them out of there. Next slide. And everything wasn't horrible. This is China Beach. That's Marble Mountain. We called it Monkey Mountain. And it was really nice. But when the enemy owned it, we couldn't be on the beach. When we owned it, then we could be on the beach. So here we are, having some fun out there in the sunshine. So, take it into your life and hoping a mortar attack isn't going to come in. So, next slide. And here we are, a little stop at Yokota Air Base. We would take them from Vietnam and we bring them to either Yokota Air Base or Clark Air Base.
Okay, Yokota's in Japan.
Yokota's in Japan, Clark is in the Philippines.
Yeah.
And it was a much shorter route. They do it all differently. Back then, we just literally tied them up, just to stop the bleeding, cleaned them up, got their trachs and breathing and stuff like that, and shipped them off to either Yokota in Japan or Clark in the Philippines, because that's where all the major surgeries and all the experts were and all this stuff. They do it totally differently now. It's safe. We had about a 70% survival rate out there in Vietnam. They have a 95, it's probably even more, 97% survival rate now.
That's awesome.
Because what they did was, instead of just fixing them up and sending them out, what they do is they have the major, like the orthopedic guys and the GI guys and neuro guys, all those experts and all the surgical teams, they're right there at the forward operating base, right there at the FOB. Absolutely amazing. So they call it the golden hour now. If you're wounded within a golden hour, and you can get from when you're wounded over to the FOB, to the forward operating base, then you will have that 95 to 97% survival rate. We even have those that have 4 limbs off, the quad amputees that live. And now we have the prosthetics that some of these people are inspirational speakers. You see them running marathons. They're doing all sorts of things. So it's a great morale booster, but every day you wake up, you still don't have your arms and legs. So, I mean, they have that tenacity, that resiliency that they have. I don't want us to lose it in this country. They were able to dig deep and get off that battlefield and dig deep when they get home. Some don't make it. Some don't have that or don't have the support system, whatever. God bless them. And they have just perished. They've not been able to survive. So, but it was a little different back there. We were not able to save all of them, and that was very hard on us nurses and the medical crew, and even the flight crew when they knew that we lost some of our people. So, next slide. Let's see what we got here. I just want to get through this so we get in our time frames here. So that was our flight crew. That's 2 nurses and 3 medical technicians. Was our flight crew? No physicians were on there, and it's absolutely amazing the work that we were able to do and what we were able to accomplish with that. Just amazing. So next slide. That's me in the middle there again. And this is that's my brother in the white shirt and me in the blue shirt. This was at Christmas in '68 in Tonsanute. We were able to get him on the base. And that's a guy in the yellow shirt putting the make on me. Buzz off, bud. My brother's here. No, we were able. Those are little aprons that we made, and we got all this stuff ready for the guys that work the med techs, for the admin, for all those that were on the ground team that was there, and it was really amazing. But it's a very sad time for me, because I'm walking across the area to get to where the party was. The mortuary was on the left on the way over. And one of the cracker boxes, one of the ambulances pulled in, and this young soldier that was on a stretcher, and they were carrying him off to bring him in the morgue. He was dead, but he had been out in the field in the heat and just laying in the water for a long time. So his skin had swelled and busted open. That totally broke my heart. This was Christmas Eve. And this is what the message that some family is going to get. That's going to be their Christmas gift, that their kid died, that he was killed in Vietnam. To this day, Christmas isn't a happy time. I understand what we're doing spiritually on that, but it's not a happy time for me because it absolutely brings it back every single time. And in Vietnam, it was a juxtaposition of things. It was the worst of times and the best of times. It was crazy. Here we're having a Christmas party, and then this kid, breaks your heart, and then you don't have time to deal with it. So you have to kind of stuff it all in, which is why a lot of stuff comes out when we come home. Readjusting to normalcy back here was difficult because the intensity of war became your normal. And when I came back, I think I was always looking for that intensity. Bungee jumping, just always
Yes.
snow skiing down the Black Diamonds.
Racing cars.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. You kind of tend
Wrestling
to do
bears.
that stuff. Yeah, yes, you were a wrestler, wrestle bear. That's another. That's it. I have to have another program on that, Ted. Yes. But anyways, let's finish up on our slides here, and some of them are a little. They will be a little. That's another one. We're armed and ready for the Saigon Zoo. We never left anything on the base without. I took a sidearm always when I went in. We had M16s back in those
Smith
days.
Wesson 38.
Got it. And so the guys always took the M16s with us, but I always wanted a weapon myself. I was used to weapons and stuff.
Sure.
I grew up with weapons and things, so I always kind of wanted that myself. So, and my brother, he ended up with an M16 too. He went along with us to the Saigon Zoo. Wasn't much at the zoo. We took the orphans from the Phu Mi orphanage right there, run by the French nuns who were angels. Yeah. And we took a bunch of them over there. We took 52 over and came back with 54. I don't know how we ever did that. But back in, I know, we had 2 extra. But the only thing was that if their parents were killed, they ended up really well taken care of by the nuns. Yeah. But the people that were local to the orphanage, if their kids were missing, they would often go to the orphanage because sometimes that's where people brought them. So they would find their kids again. That was my only hope, was that worked out that way. So. And that even ended up as an article in a San Antonio paper that we had taken them to the zoo. So it was kind of cool. Next slide. Let's see what we have here. And that's a rain gear. That's me on the right hand side there, the tall one with the poofy hair. My raincoat, it just dry rotted. There was nothing I couldn't use it anymore. It's falling apart. So it's pretty old, just like me. Next slide. And that's unloading the CSF is the casualty staging facility, and sometimes it was a big helicopter like that. It could take quite a few litters, but then the smaller ones, the Hueys they were throwing they just put the bodies in there that were dead, the bodies that were wounded, just to get them out of the field. But on that, they're heading. See the guy in the litter? They're heading into that casualty staging facility. The Army nurses are first. They got them first and got them, into the OR and stuff like that. Then we got them second and had to maintain all the bleeding and the trachs and the breathing and the IVs and all that stuff. The tubes that they had down into their stomachs and everything. They had spica casts. They were cast from underneath their arms all the way down to their ankles. And they were on striker frames, which are metal frames that you can turn so that, when the person, and those for the ones that were paralyzed from the neck down. Precious souls. Oh my gosh, what we had. Next slide. And this is a tremendous picture for me that I see. If you can take a look at that. Take a look at that particular slide there. This young guy, the ponchos are rain gear, but they're also a tent, and they're also something to carry your wounded. They're also to wrap up your dead. The little guy on the bottom, you can see that. He is wrapped in, he's dead, and he didn't make it. So he's wrapped in a poncho, and probably the rotor wash of the helicopter blew it by. But that young guy that is being carried away, he was wounded, and he's in another poncho. He's looking down, and I often think of that. That might have been his buddy. They could have been somebody he went to high school with in basic training and ended up in Vietnam. So very, very sad. And look at the mud and the dirt. I mean, it's any wonder the wounds are terrible in war. This is just, it's like that in so many different places. These men were the finest threads of America's cloth. They were so brave. They loved each other, cared for each other. They loved the Vietnamese people, who were just a wonderful agrarian people. We were fighting not the Vietnamese people. We were fighting the communists that were trying to take over their country. They didn't invite them in. They were trying to take it over, just like Russia's doing right now with Ukraine.
A lot of people didn't realize that even back then there were Chinese forces in Vietnam that were part of the North Vietnamese troops.
Yep.
They provided all the weapons for them. They trained them. They actually had Chinese regulars that were up in the DMZ area and other parts of Vietnam. And people don't realize that at that time, now also they were using Russian aircraft. And Russian MiGs and Russian trained pilots and Russian advisors. And they also had Cuban people that were there in Vietnam.
Anyone that was under communism was there to try and take over and try to help against the will of the people. South Vietnam, Now, it ended up drawing a line there. The South Vietnamese, you ought to see, if you look at a picture from, like the space shuttle, or the space station, South Vietnam is lit up like a Christmas tree. North Vietnam has like 2 lights shining in it.
Yeah.
And now you tell me which one works. Communism doesn't work. It controls the people. It doesn't let them think. It doesn't let them go. It doesn't let them move. It doesn't let them train. It doesn't let them do anything. It has to come from that higher power up there at the head of the state. And I'm not talking about God as the higher power either. It's a terrible system that removes every bit of your freedoms.
Yep. And
people are not, our young people are thinking, they're looking to socialism and communism. Oh, just everybody share. Well, everybody share baloney. It's absolutely ridiculous. If you're not working for it, you don't get the share. If you're disabled, you get plenty of the share. We've got to reset the mindset of what's going on. And it's been misinformation by the media and by the educational system that has just destroyed so much. So I want you to look at that picture again. Pull that picture up again. When you think you got it so bad and whatever, you look at what's going on, what these men went through. And it was mostly men. The women were only in admin and nursing. They didn't we were not allowed to be corpsmen in the Navy or medics in the Army as females, because the men were out there doing this particular kind of work. Look at these men. And they came back to being called baby killers and drug addicts. They came back to have tomatoes and eggs thrown at them. This is absolutely ridiculous. I love these guys. I will speak at any one of their gatherings and their meetings, whatever they want. I will give any of my time to any of them. They like the Purple Hearts and all those guys. Wonderful, wonderful young men. What a life they lived and what they gave. And next slide. Let's see what we got here. We can kind of go through these slides. This is another one. The war had a lot of head injuries, a lot of chest injuries that we had. This is out in the field. Next slide. And here's a few pictures from the 173rd Airborne. One of my friends gave me some of these pictures. Some of these pictures are online, so they're public. You can go check these out yourself. You can see what's going on, how they help each other. The guys had massive wounds on their legs. Many of them lost their legs. You don't see that here, but many of them did. Next slide. And the badly wounded, you see them all pulling that together in both legs. So sometimes the guys can't walk. You got to have somebody carry them, and this is what they did. They put their lives on the line, getting them to the evacuation helicopters. And what would the enemy do? They try and shoot down the helicopters, or they try and shoot the people bringing them to the helicopters. Yeah. Geez. I tell you, what a terrible moral code many of our enemies have had. Next slide. And this is your bath time. And church time. That's church time, sitting around. Some of our young guys, what they went through. My gosh. But if you're just like I do some hiking, and we don't have anything to this extent, but when you get to a body of water, you do like to get it kind of rinse everything off. So, next slide. And then waiting for a pickup, you can see the litters that are lined up waiting. The helicopters came in. These guys, see them loading up. Those guys were the bravest guys, the dust-off pilots, and I know a number of them. I tell you, absolutely wonderful men. They took their lives in their hands knowing they might not make it, but they did that to get in there and take off, knowing that the enemy was shooting at them. Next slide. Sweet sound of the Huey. That's right. Whoop, 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 whoop. And then the doc. This is the guy sewing him up right there. He's sewing him up out there. Now he's going to have to get some cleanup and some antibiotics, stuff when he gets back out of the field. And that's the CSF, the Casualty Staging Facility. They're just closet huts out there. Yep. Oh, the facilities they have now. Oh my gosh, they're air conditioned and they got everything is so clean and really nice stuff that they have now. We had more than what they had in Korea, and then in Vietnam. And now these guys in Iraq and Afghanistan, they had tons more than we did. And that's how they do that. The medical stuff grows with every war, too, because you figure out things. That's why a lot more lives are saved. And we just have a couple more, Drew. Let's go ahead and show those. Patient care anywhere. You're in the field, on tanks, anywhere you can bring it, jeeps and tanks and the APCs, any place that you could put the wounded to get them back out of the field and into the care facility. Next slide. And it's so hard when it's kids. This is a young kid that was wounded. Sometimes shrapnel get them. Sometimes they would step on the IEDs back then weren't cell phone controlled. But they were set to timers and went off, and so a lot of the young kids, it was really hard on our guys. That broke their hearts because many of them had brothers and sisters at home that were that age or their own kids, so it was really hard. Next slide. Yeah, that's me going into the aircraft or another slide. There you go. Young and skinny. That's how we all used to be, Ted. There you go. Next slide.
Yeah, we got the pictures to prove it.
Yeah, there you go. And that's Shirley, as a matter of fact. She's my senior pastor's wife now. And that's her. Now, this is the back of the bus called the ambus. You got to get them from the casualty staging facility, so you need a bus that has these things that can hold the litter. So, and you can see some of the wounds and some of the things of their legs and things like that. So they have to load them up, and the guys would load them onto the aircraft. And there's a certain way to do it, and part of our job on the ground was to make up a load plan on how you load them up, because the guys with the heavy cast, you don't want to put them on the top because they were 5 high. You got to put them on the bottom, and it was last on, first off. So you can't go up to the front and say, "Oh, sorry, we got to move 400 things here." So anyways, a lot of things you had to learn on that. So next one, next slide, and that's the nurse's desk on the aircraft. That's where you got your report and figured what your care plan was going to be for everybody. Next slide. And that's loading up again. These guys, and I tell that when I talk to the high schoolers, look at, they've got 120, 150 pounds of their gear on their back. They're loading up again to go out in that field again. They've already done it, and they're going to go back again. God bless them. Next slide. This one is, this always gets me. The guy's heading into the field. There's a little flower, life in front of him, and that's a field of death. I don't know how they did it. There's snakes in there and all sorts of animals and the enemy. It's absolute. And one time, one of the guys told me that there was an ambush right in the middle of that, so they just started firing away until all the fire started, stopped on the other side, and they were in the tall grass. And when they got up to where the dead were, it was it was the North Vietnamese, but they had a bunch of children. These guys' hearts were broken. These kids didn't even have
shields.
They used them as shields. Yeah. You go first, and they were shot down. It just, oh my God, that's what I'm talking about. The moral code. I'd rather come from our country with a little higher moral code. War is terrible, but you can't do those kind of things, and our enemy does. Next slide. And then a captured guy. I used to laugh. Well, look, they're demeaning the guy. You want to put that on the enemy. And look at this. Look at this young guy. Look at how young he is. And this is an enemy. You want him covered like that. You don't want him to make signals to his friends. You don't want him to know where he is. You want him.
Yeah. Totally, not only that. You said you don't want him to know where he can look around and say,
"That's
well,
right. Where he? Yeah." Bomb this.
Let him loose. He gets loose. He's going to give the whole map,
that's
the whole
right.
base.
So you don't. So it's not a demeaning thing.
No.
It is a security item. Next slide. A lot of people misunderstand. And yet pictures like that will be sent home and have all this soft. Oh, look how demeaning it is. Oh, look how demeaning when they cut off their heads and stick it on a post as the GIs walk by. Yeah. Okay, let's go. Next slide. And that's one of the helicopters at work. That's a very famous helicopter that we all understood. There you go. Next slide. And medic in the field, dirty work. There's nothing clean about out there in a war. And next slide. But I came home to teach others. I was committed to that. I knew you go with technical skills, but no one prepared my heart and my soul for what I was going to see. So I am just grateful. I came back and I told them not only the technical stuff, but I told them what they were going to see, and they need to be ready. And I was grateful to be able to do that. Next slide. And the Vietnam Women's Memorial just touches me so much. The first time I saw that, I wept because that's the guy there, absolutely amazing. And the next slide. And there's life after war. I run marathons and go hiking and just do all sorts of things. There is life after war, but you need some help to get through it. I think for me, the biggest help was the Lord coming into my life. And then we help each other with all of our veteran events and all those things. Next slide, I think it might be the last one. Oh, yeah. Then I came back, I got into chaplaincy when it was in the Army National Guard chaplaincy. Great bunch of people. It's Army, but, hey, it's okay. They're good. Right. They get up a lot earlier than we do in the Air Force, I can tell you that. They're a lot more primitive out there in the field. So, next slide. And then some of the guys, and that's, I had a few minutes on your fancy place there. And see, you can see that little hanging thing there. I put my gear in it.
Yeah.
The guys used to say, "Chaplain, you're bringing too much of the Air Force to the Army."
You got to show them out what it's like.
I put a little rug down. I didn't want my feet in the dirt when I get up in the morning. They would laugh at that. Okay. Good. Next slide. And that's just doing some of the things with some of the guys. The tent was your chapel, so it was really an awesome ministry. Next slide. And life is good if you make it that way. And God bless everyone that's listening in here. So that's it. You're safe. I'm going to shut up now.
Linda, thank you for sharing that with us. And we are Well, it's going to be a long show. We'll make this a 2-hour show, Drew, so we'll do a second part of it. Okay? And we're going to stop for a second. And Drew, if you would, can you pause it, and we will cut this so we can do a second show with it.
A second show. What are you going to do?
See, Corey? You can
He's
see,
watching
you can see what he's doing in there.
Right now, it's nothing on this monitor.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
You know, I want to thank Dr. Linda Pugsley for being here today, and she's such a big part of VRM now, and with Veterans Point. And with Veterans Point, we're able to. I'm glad that she was able to do this, so you get a little background of where we're coming from and who we are. Mm-hmm. That we're not just people that wandered in from the street out there and want to talk to you about the Lord. No, we come here with an agenda, and we're going to be very honest. What our agenda is to let you know that you're loved, and let you know, especially the veterans and out there that are seeing that's what's happening right now, and it's bringing memories back to them, and they're thinking, you know, it's never going to end. It's never going to end. Well, you know, it may not on this world, but the important thing to know is that the battle has already been won, and that battle was by Jesus Christ. And, you know, and something I just want to just give you an idea. You know, Jesus won that battle, and he did not just win the battle. It wasn't won in Calvary on the cross. I believe it was won in the garden, and it was won in the garden when he made the decision that he was going to make the decision that he'd rather go to hell for you than go to heaven without you. And he made that decision. He knew what was going to happen, but he made the decision, even though he asked for the Father if this cup could be passed. Then he made the decision, no, I'm going further. That's when the war was won. The war can be won with you. When you make the decision that, you know I can't do this alone. And I'm big enough to know that I need help. I can't push this heavy load by myself. You've got to make that decision that you know that you need the help. And what you're going to find out is you've already won, because Jesus Christ has got your back. He's got your six. He's got your future. He's got your past. He's got it all in his hands. And that's what you need to know. On behalf of Linda and myself, thank you for listening to Veterans Point, and thank you for being here with us on Veterans Radio Ministry. God bless, and we'll see you next time.